Welcome, everyone. This is Ken Clairbout, K4AAW. Glad you could join us for our presentation on remote contesting. Couple things real quick here before we get started, and most of you know the routine already. But we will record this event, and you can watch it later on if you'd like to see it again, or if you've got friends who maybe would like to see it and weren't able to attend, just let them know. It'll be posted on the W4AAW webpage, and they are also the sponsor of this event. Be happy to take your questions. We hold them until the end of the presentation, but you can send the questions in at any time. And in your little control panel, there's a questions box. You may have to hit the plus sign to blow it up and to put your question in and hit send. The other thing about that control panel is feel free to play around with it, hit buttons, do whatever. You're not going to crash the webinar for all of us. I think the worst thing that could happen is you may crash it for yourself, but don't be shy. You're not going to take the rest of us down with it. So anyways, this is something that's been in the works for a while. Actually, a topic I've been wanting to do for a while, and remote contesting. So what we're going to have tonight is just a look at what it is for maybe some people who are not familiar with it, maybe have some questions. And also there's some meat to this as well. If you're trying it or would like to try it, these guys are one of the leading edge groups here in North America with their remote contesting. So they've got a lot of good material to share with you, and you can kind of see how they're doing it. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to our presenter this evening here, Roland Archer, K4 X-Ray Delta. Go ahead, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you so much, Ken, and welcome everybody. I'm really excited to have the chance to talk to you about what we've been up to with first K4VV and now Whiskey 4 Alpha Alpha Whiskey. And it's a totally remote multi contesting operation. And tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about remote operation, what it is, some of the controversy, but very little on that. I'll show you the stations that we've been operating this way and give you a little bit of a taste of how it feels to operate a station remotely in a contest, and then share some of the results we've been getting and give you some ideas for some next steps. It's been a very hot topic, as Ken says. It's been controversial. A lot of people have been doing remote operation for a while, but it just seems like in the last year it's getting a lot more coverage. And in fact, I did this Google search about a month ago before I gave this presentation to a local group. And as you can see, we had 814,000 results for remote ham radio. I just did it before the presentation, and it was over 1 million. So it's hot and getting hotter. But it's not really completely new. And if you go all the way back to 1996, you can see where Danny K7SS operated CW Sprint with a telephone and a laptop. So that sounds pretty challenging with trying to do CW with an audio over a landline. But they say it's not completely new, and in fact in 2008 K9DX gave an excellent presentation at the Dayton Contest Forum, and there's a link to it below the slide here which you can look up. We'll make these slides available later on how he set up a fairly elaborate and large contest station and operated it remotely, as you can tell from the presentation title there, 28 miles of feed line. But anytime something new happens in ham radio, as we all know, there tend to be the people who are pushing the boundaries out on the edge, and people who are doubting the change. And there's been some questions about, is this legitimate and can it be abused? And in our opinion, when Victor Echo 8 Echo Victor was operated remotely in Sweepstakes CW 6 years ago and accepted by the ARRL as a valid contest entry, that pretty much ended the debate as far as legitimacy goes. But just because you can do it correctly, there are also ways it can be abused, so we're certainly aware of that. And in my oversimplified view of things, contest operation has some radio operators, it's got some ham radios, and we got some antennas. And if you have all the stuff that generates RF together in one QTH and the operators are scattered around, I think that's fine. in the sense that it doesn't give you any advantage over having the operator sitting right in front of the radios in the QTH, and in fact, in some ways, you have some disadvantages. On the other hand, if you start scattering the RF generators around the planet and connecting to them over the internet, that clearly can create some advantages. And in most cases, this configuration is not allowed. It was briefly allowed with CQ's extreme category in the CQ Worldwide, but that category has been discontinued as far as I know. So we can have all the controversies we want on EHAM and on the contest forums, but ultimately the contest sponsor and the countries that give us our licenses are the ones who decide legitimacy. And at this point, both ARRL and CQ are fine with remote contesting as we practice it at W4AAW, and we are very particular about adhering to the rules, making sure that what we do is legitimate and is a fair entry. So today we are W4AAW. In the past, we've been Team K4VV. We were briefly Team W0YR, so I'll explain why we've had a small identity crisis. But it's really been the same team and a lot of the same technology and approach, and it was characterized in a QST article as a totally remote multi-contesting laboratory, which we thought was appropriate because we really are experimenting and learning as we go. And I'm hoping that as a result of this presentation, you might pick up some good ideas yourself, and you might get inspired to try some of these techniques with your own club and your own stations. So we did start out at K4VV. We had an excellent station that Jack Hammett built. This is what it looked like inside the station when you were operating in person instead of remotely. And this is the station that we used for last year's contest season from 14 to 15. Jack built a very large contesting station in Virginia, and interestingly, it was on property that was once owned by Arthur Godfrey, who was a famous radio broadcaster as well as a licensed ham, K4LIB. And Jack got kind of tired. It was 600 feet from his house to the shack, and he didn't like having to walk up the hill to get to the shack to operate, so he asked Mike, who was Whiskey Zero Yankee Romeo and now Whiskey 4 Alpha Alpha Whiskey, to help him figure out a way to operate the station from his house. And first, Mike used LogMeIn, which lets you see and operate your PC screen remotely, and Skype for audio. And Jack was able to operate a station without taking the 600-foot walk. Unfortunately, Jack has been in declining health and didn't really get to use the station for all that long. Look at the antennas at that station, some very nice berthas and impressive stacks. We had 4 towers, 2 of them with stacks for 10 through 20, and one with a stack on 40, 4 over 4, and then also one with fixed Yagis for the Caribbean and South America at 135 degrees. So these were Yagis that we could switch in instantly from any position. And the antenna switching was powered by top 10 devices switches, and as you can see here, quite an interesting puzzle that we had to figure out exactly what was doing what. But with this configuration, we were able to put any antenna on any of 3 operating positions. Another view inside the shack. And as I said, we operated this through last year's contest season, and I'll share some of the results in a moment. But we did have to take the station apart. Jack's wife decided, due to his declining health, it was time to dismantle K4VV. And we thought for a while maybe that was the end of our experiment, but Mike said, hey, I've got a pretty decent station at my own QTH, and I'm willing to continue to invest in building that out. So he stepped up, and Team K4VV became Team W4AAW. So new station, a lot of the same technology, and the same team. So W4AAW, we have 3 towers. Tower 3 was just completed very recently. In fact, we're still getting things wired up on Tower 3. So we have 5-element monobanders for 10, 20, and 15, and we also have a 2 elements on 40. Just like a K4VV, we have the fixed low Caribbean Yagis, which, without having to wait for an antenna to rotate, we can quickly grab a QSO or a MULT from the Caribbean or South America, so those are handy. And we also have actually going to have some better low band and receiving antennas here than we had at K4VV. We'll have a 80 meter phase vertical array, the inverted L for 160, and we're putting up a YCCC3 inline vertical receiving array for the low bands. So these are the towers at W4AAW. Those are the 10 and 20 meter towers, and then here's Tower 3 with our 15 meter 5-element monobander, and this is the one that was just going up this week. And these are the control unit for the YCCC vertical receive array. So we're going to start with 3 elements on that and expand that to a 5-element receive array. These are not the same exact relays, but the same concept that we used at K4VV for switching. When you look at what we're doing here, this is part of the heart of what makes multi-multi contesting remotely a bigger challenge than operating a station remotely, which is a challenge as it stands already. So we have to be able to make sure that the operators can switch any antenna to any position as they make their band changes, but without being in the same room, not clobber each other and get on the same band, or try to put the same antenna on 2 different radios, or no antennas on a radio. So we're using the switching system, which Mike can explain in more detail, anyone who's interested. We have Dunestar bandpass filters, and they are needed, and the W2VJN coax harmonic stubs. And I say that they are needed because before we had the bandpass filters and the stubs in place, we did some testing over the summer, and I was operating on 20 meters, and someone was CQing on 40 meters, and I could pretty much hear everything he was doing as he was CQing. So you definitely need good filtering here. We also have legal limit amps at each position, a combination of ACOMs and alphas, and the amps are all automatically band switched and can be monitored remotely. I'll show you what that looks like in a second. So that's the hardware, and in terms of what the remote operators have at their position at the client, we have 2 flavors of clients. One is zero cost, totally open source, and this is what most of our team is using. So we're using N1MM Plus. We're actually operating that. That N1MM Plus is running on the Shack computers. We come in through a virtual private network. We're using Windows VPN. We're using the free VNC remote desktop software, so we can, from our remote desktop, see the desktop at the Shack and operate it as if we were at that computer. We've played around quite a bit with audio, and for some reason Skype works better for SSB, and Mumble, which I had never heard of before we started using it at this station, does a better job for CW audio. And for some people who like using paddles, we have gotten WinKeyer Remote working for CW keying. A lot of your keying, of course, is just done with N1MM function keys or the Control K window. And this, they say, this setup is what we have on 2 of our 3 operating positions, position 1 and 3, and this is what most operators are using. Then we also have a K3, which K3TN has loaned to the station, and we're using the remote rig hardware device on the K3. So I've used both of these setups, and they're both quite usable. The remote rig is definitely slicker, where you have a K3 in your Shack, and it can be anything from a K30, which has no RF deck, but just has all the controls, to a regular K3 running in this client mode. And half the time you really do forget that you're operating a remote station. It's that smooth. All the you turn the VFO and things, frequency changes at the remote rig as you would expect. The audio follows with a very slight lag. Filters, buttons, everything works as you would expect. So it's quite nice, but it is pricier. You're going to be spending about $1,400 minimum to get into this configuration. So then, looking at the desktop, it looks an awful lot like N1MM running anywhere, because that's really what it is. A couple of things you might notice here in the middle. You see the ACOM director with the green LCD-looking display. So that's monitoring the amplifier, and you can see there how much power you're putting out with the amplifier. There are buttons to reset the amplifier if that is needed in case there's an amplifier fault. And then over on the right, you see 3 red round buttons, 10 meter, 15 meter, and 20 meters. Those are for switching to the low Caribbean Yagis. So you can be running Europe on one of the, say here, the example here, the 15-meter monobander, and then you hear, or you want to go pick up a spot from the Caribbean, and you can punch that 15-meter button, and it'll switch you over to that antenna momentarily, and then you can go back to the other antenna. Another view of this desktop, and up on the left now you see an amp AC on and an amp reset. So this is also a recent development, which is a shack improvement. The red button that you see on the ACOM director screen that says on off, that was the bane of Mike W4AAW, especially when we were running at K4VB, and Mike was 45 minutes drive away at home, because if anybody accidentally pushed that button, if we wanted to continue to use the amp at that position, then Mike had to get in his car, drive 40 minutes, and push the button on the amplifier to get the power back. So we were totally remote in terms of operating, but not if somebody turned the amp off. Now we've come up with a essentially almost zero-cost solution to turn the power on to the amp as well as do the reset. So we're pretty excited about having that feature going forward. And for the Alpha amp, it also has remote control software, similar, giving a display of power out and a certain amount of control over fault detection and reset. So these buttons, and actually just a little bit about what we're doing at each position for things that need control, for relays that need switching and so forth. There's a very inexpensive USB interfaced relay board at each position. And then we're using N-Button Lite software, which lets us create buttons or widgets to open or close the relays on that USB relay board. And then with those relays, we're doing things like turning the amp on and off, so or switching the Caribbean Yagis. So it's, again, a little bit of good ham ingenuity here, gluing things together and making things happen, all with a very low budget but nice results approach. Here's a little bit about how we handle audio keying and radio control. And they say it's going to be a little different on positions 1 and 3, where we're doing the open source zero-cost client, and position 2, which is the K3 and the remote rig. So for N1MM, with positions 1 and 3, you are using the remote desktop, and you're using the remote copy of N1MM. The nice thing about position 2 is you run N1MM on your client PC, and it is networked over the VPN to the other PCs that are at W4AAW. So it's just a little more responsive to have N1MM operating locally than to have to go through the VNC remote desktop. For audio, for positions 1 and 3, it's Skype and Mumble. And on position 2, the audio is a function of the remote rig box. So it takes the audio, packetizes it, sends it over the network to the remote rig box by the radio, and then does the D to A back to the K3. So you just plug your headset into the remote rig box and operate as if it were plugged into your K3. For macros out of that local N1MM, we have set up a local mixer. So at your station, just some device that lets you take the audio signal coming out of your phone macros from N1MM and mix that in with the microphone from your headset. So you can feed both of those into the remote rig audio and send that to the remote K3. CW, for positions 1 and 3, you can either use WinKey or remote, or the Control K or the N1MM functions. For position 2, it's N1MM, or you can plug a paddle into the remote rig box. And finally, for radio controls, for position 1 and 3, it's all the control you get through N1MM. And then we also have a radio control app, which runs on the remote desktop, and you can use that to change filters, change bands, and so forth. And then finally, with position 2 in the K3, we have both the N1MM and your local K3 for control. As far as rotating antennas and talking to other ops, we have the N1MM widgets that show you where the 3 towers, or the antennas on those towers, are pointing. And we use the N1MM rotator program to change where you're pointing the antennas. So it's very nice. You can either enter the call sign or a prefix or the bearing, hit Alt-J, and watch as it moves. So it was pretty eerie feeling the first time, especially with K4VB and those giant Bertha monopoles, to be sitting down here in Raleigh and hit Alt-J and know that I was making that fairly large antenna tower rotate up there on Catoctin Ridge. And then in terms of not clobbering each other by getting on the same band at the same time, we use the information window in N1MM, which shows us what people are currently operating on, so you know whether to move to what bands are open that you can move to. And then we also use the N1MM chat window for inter-operator communication. So both important messages like what happened to the amp, and fun things when things get a little bit slow on Sunday afternoon. Some of the same kind of chat you might have sitting next to each other at a multi right in the station. So how do we schedule all this fun? So we have a pretty good-sized team of operators, and N2IW built a scheduling app, which he has generously made available, and it was used extensively for the W4AAW runs last year to schedule all the people who were running on that station. So we adapted that just a little bit, and it works very well. So we put up slots for every position, and then people can log in and sign up for what they want to operate, when they want to operate, and on which positions they want to operate. So now that we've had a good year's experience under our belt, what are some of the pros and cons of operating this way? On the positive side, there's a pretty low barrier to entry for people that want to join the team. With the open source options, it's very low cost, computer and internet. And it's also an opportunity to be part of a multi team. Even if you have limited time and you can't travel or get away for a whole day or the whole weekend, you can still put in 2, 4, 6 hours scattered around the weekend and do it from home, and be part of a team effort in a contest. We also like tinkering and just seeing things moving ahead. We are breaking new ground with this operation, and for a lot of people on the team, we have everything from people who actually don't have any station to people who have more modest stations. So we have a chance to contest with a nice big station. On the minus side, other than the N1MM chat window, you're missing a little bit of that social element of an in-person operation. We got even more software to yell at, so it's not a good idea to start this an hour before the contest. The internet can be flaky, so when it's good, it's great, but when you start getting latency and dropouts, it can be frustrating. You feel like more of a lid than usual when you're dealing with audio delays and dropouts, and the guy on the other end doesn't know why you're not coming back smoothly. And I found just changing the VFO and tuning with the open source model is kind of clunky with N1MM and the band map. Big changes aren't so bad. It's actually just the small changes that are harder. The remote rig operation is a lot smoother. And we have experimented with different kinds of USB tuning knobs with varying degrees of success. So we did all that, and how did we come in as a team? What kind of contest results did we get? The very first totally remote operation was in CQWPX RTTY, and not bad, 1,800 queues, 4 million points, and we didn't place, we didn't set any records, but a pretty respectable showing that proved to us that the concept was viable. And then, just as those of you who live in the East Coast might recall, before the ARL CWDX last year, there was a giant snow blizzard coming down in the DC area, and Mike said, "Hey, what the heck? Let's see if we can do an all-remote multi-multi, since nobody can get over to the shack." So this one had ops in Virginia, Maryland, North Carolina, and then Bill W4AAW actually operated from Florida. There's Bill sitting out on the balcony, glad that he escaped Snowmageddon. This one we did a little better, so 7 million points, over 4,000 QSOs again, and we managed to get a nice write-up in QST about no one in the shack, as we logged 4,200 contacts in the ARRL DXCW contest. So we're pretty pleased with that. The internet was a bit of a pain. I think it might have had something to do with the snowstorm. It didn't help things. But those of you who are familiar with the kind of numbers you get out of pings, 400 milliseconds is not a great number for time, for the round trip time. So this was, despite all the internet problems, we still felt like we had a pretty decent showing in the contest. And we actually made it into the top 10, just squeaked in at number 10. So, and if you look at who else is in that top 10 that year, we're not holding our breath to break into the top 3 anytime soon. So some pretty powerful stations up there, and it's a good list, good company. So we're quite pleased with this. Then the phone contest came along, and we said, well, let's get back and see how this works with phone compared to CW with a pretty strong effort. And there we did 3,600 queues, so a little bit fewer queues, 5 million points, but we actually managed to get into 6th place out of the top 10. And then we did the CQWPX phone, and there we had about 4,500 queues and 14.5 million points. And we were pretty excited here. We actually got number 2 finish in North America and number 1 in the 4th call area in the multi-multi category. So not bad for pioneering effort. So what have we learned out of all this? There are limitations to the zero-cost client, so especially around tuning and some of the latencies. But on the balance, it makes it wide open, so we can recruit ops. People can play with this without having to put in a lot of expense. And the remote rig, it's really is a lot slicker operation, but it does add cost and complexity. And the internet connection is the coax, so it's very important to have the best possible internet connection you can. And one of the things that we're learning is even if you test everything before the contest, once you turn on 3 positions and 3 operators banging away against the computers and N1MM networking, sending packets around, that puts a lot more stress on it than your normal tests do. So again, the better the internet connection, the happier you'll be with this operation. And finally, even though there's a lot of people doing remote ham radio for DXing, contesting is different, and especially when you're trying to do a multi-multi operation. So while we've benefited a lot from what people have done with remote ham radio for DXing, we feel like we've had to solve a lot of new problems, and we'll continue to solve different problems related to contesting and multi-multi. So Tower 3 is going up now, and we're going to finish up the receive antennas. We expect to have everything in good shape by CQ Worldwide coming up here in a week and a half, 2 weeks. We'd like to continue to get more ops and fill the schedule, so we're going to offer some more hands-on, remote hands-on training and webinars. And we're far from finished in terms of looking at new technology and how to improve the station. So it's just like anything with a ham radio operation, it's never finished. Here's some of the faces and some of the call signs that you might know who have operated. So we have a lot of people around the East Coast and in the Southeast, but we also have Tom, who's operated from Uruguay, CX7TT. And Eric has operated from out in the Midwest as well. But we're still looking for more ops because until all the shifts are filled, we'll continue to recruit. So we're very interested in adding people to the team who express an interest. So that's what I have to talk about the operation we've been doing. We'll be on the air again in the CQ Worldwide and throughout the year. And if anybody's interested in learning more about the station or interested in trying operating, you can contact Mike or myself at the email addresses given there, or any team member, and we'd be happy to talk to you about it. So Ken, that's the end of the formal presentation. If there are any questions, be happy to give them a shot.
Okay, very good. Thank you much. Excellent presentation. And let's go ahead and keep your slides up there in case we need to roll back to any of them, and the email address as well. So, folks, here's your chance. If you got any questions, go ahead and shoot these in. I'm sure otherwise we'd be happy to take your questions outside the presentation, just not like the day before a contest or so when you're struggling to get all the bugs worked out.
We just may not answer them.
Yeah, that's true. I think most software logging providers are kind of in the same boat there, the last minute panic. But so well, we'll just drag my feet here a little bit longer. I don't see any questions coming in, which is probably a good thing. It sounds like you've hit all the high points here. And you know, as you get into this, some more and more lessons learned, I'd be happy to do this again sometime. And if you've got some more things you want to impart on the group. So, one other thing I should mention: if you do submit a question, just put your call sign in with the question. Otherwise, it doesn't show up. But we got one from Gary here. He says, "Has N1MM been stable for you with the multiple connections?"
Yes, we really haven't had N1MM problems. One of the things we learned with the K3 running N1MM remotely over the VPN was keep it running. Even if you're not operating, just leave it running so that you don't have the problem of, I run for a 4-hour shift, I shut everything down, then when I come back up, and now it's resyncing the log. And that generates a ton of network traffic, which you don't need that extra stress, so it's better just to leave it running. But we've been very happy with N1MM.
Okay, very good. All right, guys, let's see here. Dennis, W4 X-ray Victor, networking in the shack. Any RF issues encountered?
We haven't had RF issues in the shack because of where Jack's location was up on the ridge there. We did use a satellite internet connection and actually just a remote link, microwave link, I should say, not a satellite link, and that would give us some issues with weather. But the biggest problem has just been the overall traffic and dealing with the volume of traffic, but not any problems so far with RF interference.
Okay, Thomas, November Yankee 4 India is wondering what VPN server you use at the station.
It's and I didn't set that up. I just know it's Windows VPN, but shoot me the question if you want more information about that, and I can send it to N4PD who set up the VPN.
Okay, here's a question from Scott, K7ZO, wondering if you've looked at other hardware solutions aimed at remote setups, and what do you think of them? Anything beyond the remote rig / K3 setup?
This is all we've used so far. We have not. We're aware that there are some other options out there. I say the goal was to have one zero cost option, and then because John was willing to loan the K3 and he already had the remote rig, that's what we went with.
Okay, another Scott W6 Charlie Tango is wondering if you've had any experience or know of anyone using the KX3 instead of the K3. If yes, has there been any major problems versus using K0 or K3?
I am not aware that KX3 can be used in this way. Hello?
Oh, I'm sorry. See,
Yeah,
you
that's
know what I did.
Yeah, I don't think the KX3 can be used as the client to
Yeah, they got your response. I just muted myself so you wouldn't hear me typing, and then I forgot to take off of mute. It's not the first time, and it won't be the last. Mike K. Charlie November, does a fast local ISP such as FiOS really make a difference in latency during times of internet congestion and make it worth the price premium?
I'd just say you'd have to experiment. When you look at from any single remote point going in, the traffic is not, the bandwidth is not incredible for what you need. It's more the latency than the bandwidth. So, I would just say, if you have somebody that has FiOS and you can try, give it a try. I mean, I'm running right now over a DSL link, which has about 500K up and about 10 meg down. And I think I'm getting about as good a connection as anybody. And I'm using Wi-Fi inside the house, so between my client PC and the DSL router, it's Wi-Fi. So I could probably improve things a little bit by going wired here, but I haven't seen the need yet.
Well, so you're on your DSL connection right now?
I am.
Yeah, sounds great. I'm on the same thing here because that's really about my only option. So
that's where I said it's either that or Time Warner, and I haven't had great luck with them. So
yeah, I couldn't even get the cable company up here. So another one from Thomas NY4I. Have you tried remote rig software? Have you tried the remote rig software option? That's a little dongle to connect to the mic.
I did, and it worked okay under certain circumstances. It was okay for phone. Of course, you don't get the control capability, which is part of the whole benefit of it, of having a K3 console. And it had some limitations compared to the larger remote rig box in terms of hooking up peripherals. So it was a little more limited. If you want to shoot me a note, I can try to dig back and find out exactly what it was it couldn't do. But I know there were certain disappointments that really didn't make it a good option.
Okay, last call, folks. If not, Roland's got his email address for him and Mike up here, and they'd be happy to take your questions outside of the presentation. So anything else you want to add, Roland, before we go ahead and wrap this up?
No, just thanks for everybody for your time, for the great questions. I'm glad they were showed some interest there, and I hope that it inspired you to give this a try, or give us an email and see if we can't get you on the team.
Okay, well, I want to thank you for taking the time to put this together. Like I said, it's been something I've been meaning to do for a while, and I talked to Mike off and on, and then the issues with Jack Station and stuff came up, and so it got pushed to the back burner. But I'm glad we were able to finally connect and get you to do the presentation. A lot of good information here, and did an excellent job presenting. So thank you for that. So that's it, folks. On behalf of the Worldwide Radio Operators Foundation, who sponsors these webinars, I'd like to thank you for attending. And we have another one coming up Thursday night with K9 LA and solid state amplifier design. If you're interested in that and you haven't signed up yet, go to www.wwrof.org, and under the webinar link, you'll find the registration for that. So maybe we'll see you Thursday night. If not, have a great week, and thank you all for coming. 73s. Bye-bye.